The campfire crackled, flames danced in the darkness, casting long, dancing shadows among the trees. 4 friends huddled closer, their faces lit by the flickering orange glow. There was laughter, the clinking of tin mugs. A peaceful night, you might think. You'd be wrong. "Did you hear that?" whispered Emily, her eyes wide. "Hear what?" scoffed Mark, throwing another log onto the fire. Sparks flew up into the night sky. "Just an animal," John said, his voice calm, but his eyes darted nervously into the darkness beyond the firelight. Something was wrong. They all felt it. The first chill wind of the night swept through the campsite, rustling the leaves and sending shivers down their spines. No one spoke. The laughter was gone, replaced by a silence heavier than any of them could have imagined. The woods were alive with sounds. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig seemed amplified in the stillness. A low growl echoed from the darkness, sending a chill down their spines. It was close. Too close. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. John grabbed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. "Stay close, don't wander off." Mark laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Come on, guys, it's just the wind." But even he couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. The fire crackled again, a shower of sparks momentarily illuminating the woods around them. For just a second they thought they saw a figure standing at the edge of the light, a tall, shadowy form that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The friends sat huddled together, their eyes scanning the darkness. The air grew thick with unspoken fear. Something was out there, watching them, hunting them. A twig snapped, then another. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling their campsite. Emily gasped, burying her face in John's shoulder. "We need to leave, now!" Mark scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with panic. "I'm with her, let's get out of here!" But it was too late. A blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It was John. He lay by the fire, a dark stain spreading across his chest. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, his filled with terror and a silent plea for help. Then he was gone. Panic surged through them like a wildfire. There was no time for grief, no time for questions, only the primal instinct to survive. They bolted into the darkness, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The forest floor was treacherous, roots reaching out like grasping claws. Branches whipped at their faces, tearing at their clothes, but they didn't dare slow down, not with that sound, that guttural rasp of pursuit echoing behind them. Emily stumbled, her ankle twisting beneath her. Pain shot up her leg, but she bit back a scream. There was no time for weakness, not now. Mark stopped, his eyes searching the darkness. "Emily, we have to keep moving." But there was hesitation in his voice. Fear was starting to outweigh loyalty. Section 5. The Hunted. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs screamed for mercy. Every step felt like a battle against the forest itself, the uneven ground threatening to trip them at any moment. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, a maze of shadows and whispering trees. Each rustle of leaves felt like a sinister whisper, urging them to keep moving, to not look back. The moon, their only guide, was swallowed by a blanket of clouds, plunging them into absolute darkness. The once faint light that gave them hope was now gone, leaving them to navigate blindly. Emily could hear her own ragged breaths, the pounding of her heart in her ears. Each breath felt like a countdown, a reminder of how close their pursuer might be. She risked a glance over her shoulder. Nothing. The darkness played tricks on her eyes, making her doubt what she saw. But the silence was worse. It was an oppressive, suffocating silence that made every small sound amplify in her mind. It meant their pursuer was close, moving like a phantom through the undergrowth. The unseen threat was more terrifying than anything they could imagine. A low growl, closer this time, sent a fresh wave of terror through her. It was a sound that promised danger, a reminder that they were not alone. They had to find shelter, a place to hide, but where? The forest offered no sanctuary, only more shadows and hidden threats. Mark grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a towering oak. His grip was firm, a silent promise that he would protect her. They huddled together, their backs pressed against the rough bark, trying to control their ragged breathing. The tree felt like a fragile barrier against the unknown. The hunt was far from over. The forest seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a dark energy that promised more danger. It was only just beginning. The night was long and their ordeal had only just started. They had to stay vigilant, for the true terror was yet to come. Section 6. Accusations and Fear. They didn't speak, but the accusations hung heavy in the air between them. The silence was almost deafening, a tangible force pressing down on them. It was in the way they looked at each other, in the flinch of a hand moving too quickly. They both knew it. The tension was palpable, a silent battle of wills. One of them would be next. The fear was a living, breathing entity, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant screech of an owl. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shivering that racked her body. She felt the cold seeping into her bones, but it was the fear that truly chilled her. She couldn't tell if it was from the cold or the fear that was slowly turning her blood to ice. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. "We have to get out of here," she whispered, her voice hoarse. The words felt like a lifeline, a desperate plea for escape. "We have to find help." Mark's eyes narrowed. His suspicion was a dagger, sharp and unyielding. "How do we know it's not you?" he hissed. The accusation was a spark, threatening to ignite the fragile peace between them. "How do we know you didn't do something?" His voice was low, dangerous, each word a challenge. His words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. The tension was a coiled spring, ready to snap at any moment. They both knew how this story ended. One final victim, one final scream. The forest would bear witness to their fate, silent and indifferent. Section 7. Alone. Emily didn't wait for an answer. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears like a drum of impending doom. She scrambled to her feet and ran, ignoring the searing pain in her ankle. She didn't look back, not even for a second. Didn't dare to see if he was following. The fear of what she might see was too great. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every rustle a sign of danger. The forest seemed to press in on her, suffocating her with its darkness and secrets. The trees whispered ancient tales of despair and loss. Thorns tore at her clothes, leaving bloody scratches on her skin. But she didn't care. The physical pain was nothing compared to the terror that gripped her heart. Pain was a distraction from the terror that gnawed at her sanity. Each step was a battle, each breath a struggle. She had to get out, had to find a way to escape this living nightmare. Had to escape this nightmare. The forest seemed endless, a maze designed to trap her forever. But the forest held her captive, a labyrinth with no exit. Every turn led to more darkness, more uncertainty. A twig snapped behind her, the sound was sharp, like a knife cutting through the silence. Close, too close. Her breath hitched, and she forced herself to keep moving. She risked a glance over her shoulder and saw him, a fleeting shadow against the darkness, his eyes glinting with a malevolent light. The sight sent a fresh wave of panic through her. He was gaining on her. The distance between them was shrinking, and she knew she couldn't keep this pace forever. Section 8. Face to face in the darkness. Emily burst into a small clearing, the remnants of an old logging camp. A dilapidated cabin stood in the center, its windows dark and lifeless. It was her only chance. She stumbled towards it, her breath catching in her throat. Her hand reached for the doorknob, cold and slick with moisture. It wouldn't turn. Locked. She rattled it frantically, but it wouldn't budge. He emerged from the trees, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. He moved with a chilling grace, a predator toying with its prey. His face, hidden in the shadows, was a mask of unknown horrors. "There's nowhere left to run," he rasped, his voice a low growl that sent shivers down her spine. "It's time to end this." Section 9. A desperate struggle. Terror lent her strength. She grabbed a rusty axe leaning against the cabin wall, its blade dull but heavy. He kept coming, his eyes never leaving hers. "Stay back," she screamed, her voice raw with fear. He chuckled, a low, guttural sound that echoed through the clearing. "You can't escape me," he said. "You were never meant to leave this forest alive." He lunged. Emily swung the axe with all her might, a desperate cry escaping her lips. The blade met flesh and bone with a sickening thud. He roared in pain, stumbling backward. Emily didn't hesitate. She attacked again and again, each swing fueled by pure adrenaline and a primal need to survive. Section 10. Silence falls. The clearing fell silent, except for the sound of their ragged breaths and the pounding of Emily's heart. She stood over him, her chest heaving, the axe trembling in her grip. He lay still, his chest a mangled mess. A wave of nausea washed over her. She dropped the axe, the metallic clang echoing through the stillness. She had survived, she had fought back, but at what cost? The moon emerged from behind the clouds, bathing the clearing in an eerie silver light. It illuminated the scene before her, the carnage, the blood, the lifeless eyes staring up at the indifferent sky. The forest held its breath, its secrets safe for another night. Section 11. Epilogue. Emily stumbled out of the woods at dawn, her clothes torn, her body bruised and bloodied. She had no memory of how she escaped the clearing, no recollection of the hours that followed her desperate fight for survival. The authorities found the killer's body days later, his face disfigured beyond recognition. They never identified him, never discovered his motive. He remained a phantom, a nightmare creature born from the shadows of the pines. Emily never spoke of that night, the terror that unfolded beneath the cold, indifferent stars. But the forest held its grip on her, its whispers haunting her dreams. She knew with a chilling certainty that some wounds never truly heal, some shadows never fade.